I'm happy to.
Okay, it is 1 o'clock. Welcome everybody to the September 9th, 2025 meeting of the single exit multiplex housing tag. Um, if we can take a roll call and then let anybody from the public that wants to be recognized right after that. So go ahead.
Alrighty. Roger Herringa,
I'm here.
Dan Young,
I'm here.
thank you. John Hall, not seen in the room. Joe Mayo, not seen in the room. Andy Lorenz, not in the room. David Kinley is not in the room. Jeremy Moore, not in the room. Jonathan Goldsmith,
Present.
thank you. Robert Baglio, not seen in the room. Michael Wright, not seen in the room. Jesse Bank, not in the room. Shweta Sinha, not seen in the room. Mike Messer,
I'm here.
thank you. David Lynham, not seen in the room. Dave Cocott,
Present.
thank you. Rich Geisky, not seeing online. Spencer Gardner, not seeing online. Derek Weigel,
Yes, here.
thank you. Richard Williams, not seeing online. John Sue,
Here.
thank you. With that one, we are shy of a quorum by 2 seats right now. And I'll continue to monitor to see who might pop on.
Okay, we just need to consider that as we get to any official action. Is there anybody from the public that would like to introduce themselves? Patrick, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm not seeing any.
Can I
So
introduce myself?
oh yes,
Sorry, I don't know.
yes, go ahead, Ardell.
Thanks. Hi, my name's Ardell Jala, building official for Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Raise your hand or speak up. So as part of the introduction in the meeting minutes, there is a what is it called?
Schedule.
It's a schedule document. And Dustin, if you can bring that up,
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of introduce. This has kind of been an ongoing conversation. I know Patrick has weighed in. I appreciate that, but just kind of what is our path forward? And yes, thank you. So Dustin and I have kind of worked backwards a little bit, and currently the CR is a kind of the end of January 121 or 24 is when we file the CR 102. What that means, so after that, there is a comment period, there is a public hearing, there is the drafting of the CR 103 document that gets final approval. Council, the CR 103 filing, so approval is at the council meeting on 3/20. I think that Dustin, the filing is 4/1 or 4/22. There's certain times when we have to file those.
Right. So some of this separates out. So for the filing dates, we're using the code revisor filing deadlines as those dates. They could happen a little bit before them, but if we file before those dates, those are the dates that we have to plan from. So the comment periods, if we, filed on 121, it would end on the 25th, which gives us the time for 2 hearings on either side of the state. Same thing, if I have these darker ones over here indicating kind of a separated timeline, if we needed to file one filing date after that, then we have some dates in here. So if there's multiple dates in here for filing stuff, it's really just to show that those would be like the options for us to try to get in here and finish by the end of April. And so currently we are in the September 2025 timeframe. So we're in the tag discussion of the issues. Here by January, we want to have technical language pretty well squared away and economic impacts discussed so that we can file a CR 102 cost benefit or preliminary cost benefit analysis and small business economic impact statement. Once we get that drafted, we have a council meeting in January to review that and approve that, and then we want to file that by the 21st of January or February 2nd, depending on draft needs there. The February council meeting will be after the 4th, so we need to get it in by then. And then we have the comment periods lining up with those filing deadlines. And then at the end of those comment periods, anticipating having some work group sessions to discuss comments that come in and potential draft changes there, and a council meeting to review any of those draft changes and make final adoption there on the 20th or the 17th of April. And then the CR 103P filing can occur after those council meetings and all the draft work is complete and ready to go.
So that's kind of all staff outside of the tag. But what the critical piece is that basically January 1st, end of December timeframe when we need to be done. And given that we are doing a single subject on each at each meeting, we have, counting today, we have either 3 or 4 single exit meetings left and either 3 or 4 multiplex housing meetings left, assuming we stick to the 2-week schedule. I actually recognize that November, there's some dates. I think that the next 2 months, the September and October, are pretty well set. The November and December dates, we're going to kind of have to monitor as we go forward, both with holidays, with other events going on, also knowing that at the end of by the end of the month, we have to have our work done. So I wanted to introduce that. I'm open to comments now if people have comments about it. I also, this is not set in stone. This is our plan moving forward. So hopefully we can stick to it. And I think, as has been mentioned in the past, I think that the end of December, 1st of January, that's when we need to have our work done. The majority of it. I think there might be, in March, there might be another meeting that we call to review questions or comments that we get from the public comment, the hearings. So, but most of our work is going to be done by the end of the year. Okay, go ahead.
I'm just was going to show some calendars that I have going to show kind of what we're working with and the maybe changes that were made from the draft you last saw, Roger, before this got posted. So on the right here is a 2026 at a glance calendar. On the left is a 2025 at a glance calendar. These are created to show our stuff on the right is the plan at the moment and kind of following the same format as our 2025 meeting schedule. And so the yellow squares on here are the filing deadlines, and gray squares on here are holidays and things like that that fall through here. So in November, we did have a cadence of meeting. So today is the 9th. We would be on the 23rd next and the 7th, the following one. That week, or sorry, not the 7th, then the 21st, and then the 4th of November. So this week right here is the proposed week of hearings for the 2024 codes. And so we won't be able to meet that day because we'll be having hearings running through. And we have a holiday on the 11th. And then we're set up for the schedule that we showed earlier to meet on the 18th. And then We would be going through December, and if we, have some issues with going through on December on the dates identified, it's the 2nd, the 16th, and the 30th. I'm open to changes on that part of it. But as Roger said, we've only got 2 or 3 meetings per subject left in the year to handle these topics.
I had 3 or 4, and I think that a single exit we're farther ahead than the multiplex. And I also, if we ended up needing to go to an extra meeting at some point towards the end, 1 or 2, we may need to do that. So hopefully not. Hopefully we can get through it. But okay, Patrick, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question for Dustin. Is 2 full weeks in January going to be enough time for the staff to do the CBA and SBEIS for this?
So I would like to try to start having some of those discussions as we get into like if I have information for it, yes, we should be able to do that. But I would like to try to have the technical language nailed down in like maybe the second half of December, this group embark on that economic discussion and have another work group of economic impact meeting for these topics as we approach January. I want to try to get that information by January. And if I can be set up like that, yes, I think that that's a reasonable timeline.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other comments? That was a long introduction, but that's kind of where we're at, setting the table. So let's move on and keep moving. So we have review and approve the agenda. If you could bring that back up, if I could have a motion in a second, and then if there's any discussion items. And
oh wait, let me
we
make
don't
sure
have
a quorum here.
Yeah.
Real quick. Let me just do a call out and see because there's a lot longer list here now. I got John Hall, see is here.
Present.
Joe Mayo, not seeing. Andy Lorenz, I see on.
Present.
David Kinley, not seeing. Jeremy Moore, not seeing. Robert Baglio, not seeing. Michael Wright, not seeing. Jesse Bank, Shweta Sinha, David Lynham, Rich Geiske. I think I see you on there.
Yep, I'm here.
Spencer Gardner, Richard Williams. We are sitting flush with a quorum, just barely.
Okay, great. So if I can have a motion to approve the agenda and a second, and then we can make any comments.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Go ahead,
Professor
Derek.
will second.
I saw Derek motion to approve and Andy second. Are there any comments?
Looks good.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, agenda is approved. Item 3 is the minutes from the August 26th meeting. And Dustin, if we can get them up and page through slowly so that they are a visual record. I wanted to say thank you, Dan, for filling in for me.
Would note a couple typos in the names, but I don't know if that's something we need to fix. First one is in the members in attendance, Richard Williams.
Was here?
No, they just,
Oh,
it's
sorry,
the typo.
I'm-
Typo, the name. It says Rochard right now.
okay.
Dustin, my last name's spelled incorrectly as well.
Yeah, Lorenz. Yeah, I was going to point that out too.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Richard and then Andy Lorenz. Where's Andy?
And my name is spelled properly.
Members absent. Yeah, there you go.
There.
Okay.
Derek, your name is spelled correctly or incorrectly?
correctly. I figured
Okay.
I'd just be the opposite. Everyone
All
else
right.
is, you're doing
I-
good. Mine's spelled right.
I have one of those names too, so. And then I did see in the welcome introductions, you probably should capitalize Dan's first name
Probably.
if we're gonna be proper.
Yep.
Any
Also,
other
my name has an H in it, JOHNATHAN.
Where's your name, Jonathan?
I got them up here in the members in
Oh,
attendance.
there. Okay. Okay. You got that? Okay. All right. Any other comments? All right. Let me see. I think that did we have a motion to approve this? We did not.
Yes.
Moved.
John, Sue moved to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
I didn't see who that was.
Jonathan Goldsmith.
Jonathan, thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, minutes have been approved. So now we go to item number 4, which is the single exit work. And Ardell, you've been doing an excellent job of working our way through that. And I think that the right way to do this would be to take the where we left off on this spreadsheet with the issues item. I guess I will ask if you're willing to do that again, Ardell.
Sure. I'm not sure where we left off. So Dustin, if you can
I'm
remind
getting
me
there.
on in our 4-week gap here.
We
Yes.
left off on the 12th after what was it? It was the parking garage stuff, and we left off at amenities spaces within here. And I just make sure everybody notices this got moved around as part of the stuff we were doing, just to try to, I think, to group it with other stuff we were talking about. But this is doesn't have a discussion date on here or any input. So, but we left off at amenity spaces, and I'm getting the document pulled up here.
Sure.
And does it work if I show it side by side like this, or is it too small, or whatever works for everybody? I can move it around.
Works for me on my end.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that works. So the code language is item 2. And all of these are about communication. And so these list of areas where it says additional clarity needed, are we coming back to this right now? Is that our starting point, or do I go to area of refuge afterwards?
I think let's do the area of refuge here, and we can circle back to this. It's been a while and I got a lot going on with the other codes, but I believe that we did talk about this, but I don't exactly know specifically when and how that's all interconnected, where this note came from. So I have to go back and check some notes, but let's start at the area of refuge.
Okay. The area of refuge is, because the presumption is that this is a sprinkled building, that it would then comply with the sprinkler exception. And so there's no provisions within the single exit baseline proposal to do anything beyond code, that a single exit building that is sprinkled would not be required to provide areas of refuge. And if hold on, is there a need for discussion on that, or? And to be clear, that's currently allowed in a single exit building as well, per the table.
Sounds
And
good
so
to
I
me.
believe right now we're just saying that is status quo per the base code. And
Correct.
so I guess the question would be is, I don't think anybody's raising that we need to make any changes per the appendix, so I would just update this to be per code over here.
That's correct, unless there's dissent. Okay. The next section, and some of these things are, you know, they're topics for discussion only in that, like, they may not be included in the provisions, and it's just because they're, again, per the base code. So an accessible means of egress is if this is an elevated building, then depending on the story count, the conveyance must serve as an accessible means of egress. That's based on the base code provisions. And so there's no additional provisions in the appendix beyond base code. So the WABO recommendation in the base proposal was that it's just status quo per code. I'm not hearing any concerns on that.
So maybe I should be a little more up to speed on that particular code. This is Derek Hugel.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says one must be an elevator.
Yeah, that's super shorthand, Derek. Sorry.
No, I know, but my
Yeah.
concern is we're limiting the heights of these to 3 stories already. And maybe there's already a code out there, but if we're mandatory making one be an elevator, which I don't think that's
This
the
is not
code.
in the 3-story
Okay.
building, Derek. So this is the single exit in the building code, not the multiplex.
Got it. Okay.
So in the building code, this is allowed to go up to 6 stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I was looking at the 1009-21 provisions out of the IBC for when an elevator is required to serve as an accessible means of egress, it's when an accessible floor is 4 or more stories above or below a level of exit
Ground,
discharge.
yeah,
So if
that-
I'm
yeah,
a
keep
5-story or
going.
a 6-story building with an elevator, then the code requires that elevator be an accessible means of egress and would have
Oh,
to
yeah.
have the bells and whistles of an
Right,
AOMOE.
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect. Keep rolling. Yep.
great.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Somebody else?
Yeah, sorry, this is John Hall. Apologies that I missed a couple meetings, but I wonder if this is the point where it's discussed about standby power and or emergency power and what those requirements of that elevator are.
Sure.
I believe there's some provision that basically generators were going to be mandatory in this provision for legally required standby power. I don't know if that's been resolved or not.
So there's two requirements in that, John. One is for the pressurization,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is for an accessible means of egress. And that we're trying to not vary on the accessible means of egress comes out of the base code requirement. So if you want to come back to the pressurization, which would be specific to the single exit requirement and the power requirements on that, we can.
Okay.
Is this the appropriate time, Roger, that you want to kick back to that?
Sure. Is that something that we had flagged up above? I don't know where it is.
I think it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's flagged up above and
Yeah.
we had discussed it, yeah.
Then I'm going to ask us to keep going through. I want to get all the way through, which we're close to the bottom now. And then we will go back through all of those that say additional clarity needed. If we
Okay.
can. And if that's all right, John. And then Todd, I see yours, but I just want to have one question for Ardell and any other building officials. When we, this is a standalone appendix. And on a number of these issues, we are relying on per code. For instance, the last two that we've just said, is it clear that it's per code, or should we have information in here and just be really clear that in this case, if you're using the appendix, spell out all of those information, all of that information.
Can I
And
answer?
yes, go ahead.
So in the charging language, it says in addition to the means of egress requirements of chapter 10, which this is a provision for chapter 10. So while we did kind of discuss that as part of the tag, like an appendix is not standalone, the code still applies.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as a concession to that, though, we did point out that from that all of chapter 10 applies still in that charging language.
Okay. And I do think, I thought we had that conversation before, but again, came to mind again. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to clarify on the elevator, you know, the question is going to come up from legislature on the wheelchair versus the stretcher. Is this the appropriate time to have the tag take a position on that?
Is that a listed as a topic? I don't.
It's not listed as a topic because it is a requirement of our occupancy buildings that comes out of chapter 31. It's not, it could be specific to exiting, I guess, if you want to make a different, take a different stance where this is, we don't care, you know, what's happening in 31, but for a single exit, we want both a stretcher and an elevator. That's not currently addressed by the proposal, though. Todd's right. It's relying on base code is what the proposal would say for, is how the proposal looks at the stretcher requirement.
Dustin, let's add that as another topic for discussion. I don't want to get sidetracked too far. We know we need to address that, or at least talk about it. And I think there may be some other additional clarity needed on some elevator questions, so we can
and
try
just
to work through that.
To come back and close out, for John, legally required standby power as the base code is allowed for an accessible means of egress. So we'll come back to that, I guess, later relative to the pressurization for a single exit.
Ardell, just a quick question. I assume the Seattle code also doesn't address, it's relying on the base code for elevator car size?
That's correct.
Would it be accurate to just say it's not addressed just for the purposes of our matrix?
You could just say per code.
Okay.
John, go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think it's per code. The entries there are per code.
Yeah, it's not that it's not addressed, it's just per code.
Gotcha.
Okay. Are we on to fire department, the professional fire department? I think that did we address that? Thought that we had.
I think we've got some supplemental documents that were part of the meeting minutes today, or meeting reference documents today. So I don't know if
they've been kind of been kicking down the line for a couple meetings now, just to make sure that we keep them in there for discussion. I don't think we actually pulled them up to discuss when we first kind of had them online. I think that we've also expanded on the fire department lines in the spreadsheet.
So I think that it is now time for us to spend some time going through these fire department items. Do you want to bring that up, Dustin?
Yes. So first, I'll have down the WSRB rating document that we have up on there. And I think it addresses our next line. We have talked about what a professional fire department would look like. And we may have shown this briefly as well, but we don't have any notes in our spreadsheet for it. And I believe this came to us from Dave Kokop.
Yeah, Dave, you're hand is up. You want to comment?
Yeah, I apologize, I was not in the last meeting, but in further communication with the Washington Survey and Rating Bureau, they have requested we do not utilize their data for code basis for this tag or for other building codes for the state. It's just for their customers. So that is the reason why we have this separate criteria is farm marshals group that participate on this tag went together and put together our documentation, what we felt it would be, as WSRB has requested, please don't use our information.
So the numbering system is good for us to look at as kind of a baseline, but we've got to come up with our own language.
Right. We can't say if you're rating a 3 or less, that needs to be removed. Now, there is some general discussion in here as what those bases will be. And I don't know if Mike or I'm not sure where we're at with that, Mike. So, Dave Lynham, and you were talking about some of that. Unfortunately, I missed last meeting, so I don't know if you have any other background for that, Mike.
Yeah, no, I think where we went back to, since we've scrapped WSRB at Bob's request, is actually coming up with those prescriptive criteria are for the fire department, and that's where we've left off and what we really need to dive into discussing. I think everything else we were pretty in agreement on.
Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear they were not using the data. I was concerned that having it be 3 or less would leave out the lion's share of cities from being able to utilize this code. I understand legislation says to consider, I forget the exact terminology, but the fire risk and fire provisions. But we want to make sure that this is, going to be a widely available option, and it's not going to be heavily restricted to just, a small minority of cities in the state. So I'd be interested in hearing more about if you're going to be looking at, is there certain, like what certain qualities or how you're going to be looking at making that determination without using the WSRB data. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. I was about to try to pull up the legislation, if I can find it here. Oh, you have it?
I can pop it open.
Sorry, you've got. Oh. And that's not it. Substitute Senate bill. The language says, recommendation must conclude consideration for adequate and available water supply, the presence and response time of a professional fire department, and any other provisions necessary to ensure public health, safety, and general welfare. So just, yeah, as a reminder for everybody, if that's what we're looking at and trying to define, I think we had all originally felt like it's difficult to write code language that meets that because what is a public or professional fire department and what is adequate and available water and response time. That's why we were kind of hoping to count on the rating system, but I think we're back at square one maybe about the defining professional fire. So so Dave or Mike, it sounded like you've we have professional fire department. What is our backup as rather than a WSRB rating? Do we have
There we go.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I had to find my speaker again. We've got a document going around that actually defines a professional fire department. and really trying to write a definition for that based on RCW definition. And I know Dave Lyman isn't on, but he did a really good job of putting together a little baseline for us that calls out RCW 52, 53, and 35, which also includes the entities allowed to establish fire departments. But with that, the biggest thing we're looking at and diving down to what that professional fire department is actually the response. So we feel that we've got a really good handle on dealing with water supply. There's existing code that we can lean back to, which is Appendix B for fire flow. And then Appendix C already tells us where our hydrants need to go, so we can bring that in. Fire apparatus access roads is controlled by Section 503 of the Fire Code and Appendix D. So we have a really good place to go that is already international code language. But coming into the professional fire department, the biggest thing is we are taking the engineering out of these buildings and putting more expectation on our local fire departments and their response capability. Number one, they have to have a ladder truck. There has to be a ladder truck to come and respond that ground ladders cannot hit. Just so everybody knows, the tallest ground ladder you're going to see on a engine is 35 feet. So at a 70-degree climbing angle, that gives us 30 feet of area that we could cover to bring folks out a window. So an aerial device is needed to hit essentially stories 4, 5, and 6. So ladder trucks requirement. The area that we're still talking about internally is what does that staffing look like? So do we write something prescriptive on allowing a fire department to contract with another area that has a ladder truck available and it's on what we call a mutual aid or auto aid agreement? Or do we look at that ladder truck being within a response area within these buildings and has to be staffed by the agency? So that's kind of where we're at right now. But we feel like we've got the location, water supply, hydrants, and fire apparatus access roads pretty much tidied up with existing code language that's at the international level. We're just really looking into what our flexibility is on that fire department and those response standards.
So Mike, you're talking about you are working on that. Would it make sense for us to table those until you guys kind of have here's what you're thinking and get the document out for everybody else to review?
Yeah, correct. And I can send that through Ardell or to Dustin and give y'all where we're at. And I think our next single stair meeting will have a really good idea of what that professional fire department is shaping up to be.
Okay. I'm going to then suggest that we postpone all of those fire department, at least all the FD ones that we've got there until the next meeting. And if we can get that information, and I would ask Mike to get a draft now if you're still kind of trying to clean up the professional fire department. That can come later, but let's get it out, probably send it to Dustin and so he can distribute it out to the tag members.
Okay.
And
I was also going to add that we are involving other fire groups, so the fire chiefs, for instance, and some others as to providing some feedback on us. And it's taking a little bit more time than we thought for that. But we're trying to get as much involvement of each group of the fire service to be able to provide us good information so that we don't put something out that they're not going to be too happy with. So we want to make sure that we have it right before we bring it full to the tag.
okay, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Roger, if we really need to postpone all of them. I mean, they're saying water supply, fire hydrants, fire apparatus access are all basically per code, right? So if I'm understanding that correctly, or at least we can point to the appendices that they're referring to in that document on the right on Dustin's screen there. So I think we might be able to dispose of those at least and not have to come back to them.
That's fine. I was kind of thinking we might hit them all at once, but Dave, go ahead.
I was going to add that one of the things that is a concern within the language here is we talk about the fire access roads. It doesn't include the addition of Section 503, and Section 503 is not adopted by the state. So that is one of the problems I had since I was on the council, trying to get that kind of fixed, because it basically removes the fire access road requirements and puts it into the local hands. So that's another piece of wording I think we need to work with a little bit. So the fire access roads, I would not take action at this point yet until we have that resolved.
So which ones are per code then? The water supply and the fire
Water
hydrants?
supply and fire hydrants, yes.
Okay.
And you said the fire hydrants as well needs to.
Yes. Fire hydrants and water supply are per code.
Correct.
And you can take the tabled, yeah, take those two off. And I'm going to ask, is there anybody, again, we will have time to go back through this. I mean, this is kind of our first pass, and I know that we're going to want to look at everything, together, but anybody have concerns about the per code for those two?
Hey, Roger, this is Messer. I just want to add one thing about our per code for the water supply and hydrants. We are taking those from appendices, and it's
Okay.
Appendix B and Appendix C. Both of those at the local level are typically adopted. So what this would do is force those jurisdictions to use those appendices when building the single exit or single stair.
And is that an appendix to the fire code or the building code?
Appendix to the fire code.
Yeah. And I do think we need to be careful. I know as part of we do have a consideration, I can pull up, I think that we are directed to put this in the building code. So it is possible, here's my opinion, and I'm not a technical code person, but we've been directed to put it in the building code. If we're relying on a fire code appendix, I think that we need to have it in the document saying per fire code appendix B and fire code appendix C, and have that specifically in our document rather than just saying per code. I mean, I don't know, John or Ardell or somebody that's more into code writing than I am. I just want to be, there is a code correlation component that we need to make sure we're monitoring. Dave, go ahead.
Like the basic wording that we have in our handout here is what we're probably going to be going towards for the language would be in the proposed language for the single exit, which we have referred specifically to the appendix and it's in the fire code.
Yeah.
So I do agree. We need to be very clear with that.
And maybe it can be dealt with in the user note up on top, and that per code is still building code. I don't know. I just want to make sure that we're careful that we're if we're relying on a fire code, is that included? Are people directed at that? So John, go ahead.
I think you can direct them to that in these provisions here. But just wanted to make a note that that user note is going to have to change substantially.
Okay.
Based on what we're doing. Remember, we wrote that originally as thinking this was going to be optional. So we haven't, since it's user note, I know we haven't talked about that much, but that's going to need some substantial editing.
Okay. Well, if we can just keep that in mind, there is a fire code, building code question. So, emergency communication, and I don't know if this is Ardell or if this is Dave or Mike who wants to take the emergency communications.
I say I'm going to lean on my colleagues for this one. I'm not remembering what the emergency communications was covering. Was that two-way communication stairwell?
No, I think it's just built into the WSRB rating is,
So 911 PSAP system?
I think
Because
so.
that's what would be part of the WSRB.
Yeah.
I said I'd have to look to see what else, but as far as your PSAPs, your public safety or public safety answering points, your 911 centers, your fire departments have very little, if any, control over them. So I'm not exactly sure what we could even write in that other than that a 911 system is available.
I concur with that, Mike, because it's very difficult for us to say any particular requirements. I think we just have to say that there has to be a dispatching process or dispatching capability for that jurisdiction to be considered.
Yeah.
John?
I'm just wondering if we can remain silent on it, or are you saying we need to specify that that there has to be a 911 system available?
I think on this, it's almost synonymous. If you have a professional staffed fire department, then my expectation is there is a PSAP, a 911 center in the county. I am not aware of any areas in the state of Washington that do not or are not covered by a PSAP. So with that, I'm kind of asking that as a blanket question. There's Dan, so that's what I needed. Dan, what you got?
I have issues with a mouse other than that. I'm just wondering if this isn't the emergency communication, emergency responder communication coverage that's covered under section 510, where with the new building, you have to have emergency communication throughout the building.
Gotcha. Yep. Yep. And I see the 510 note. No, you just hit on it. So 510 is per code in the IFC.
Yeah. And that's so when first responders come in, where just to educate people real quick, like if you have like a Home Depot that's all concrete and steel, a lot of times the radios don't work inside and they may have to have supplemental communication so that fire departments can get in. Their radios can communicate inside and outside the building. And that's required in all new construction for all buildings in the fire code. So I think that would be one we would just put in and, because that section is heavily amended by the state. Just, refer it to IFC section 510 and amendments.
Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. If that's already in the fire code, I guess I'm trying to understand why we would need to have reference to it here. Is it just to call attention to it, or what's the value of including a reference to the fire code within this?
I can answer that, Spencer. I think what we're doing is like the per code that's up above the, I think it's the area of refuge. We've said it's per code, but it's per the IBC. We do need to be a little bit careful in my mind if we're saying per code and it's per the IFC, that, maybe this is covered in when we rework the user note up above, but there's a code correlation piece there that we got to make sure if we're relying on IFC, I just want to be careful and make sure, but that we're covering, again, code language. So I think as much that right now the note is per us is for us that, okay, it's per IFC 510. As we go back through and rewrite this, I'm not sure what needs to be specifically mentioned or what doesn't.
Thanks. I think that's what I was missing. So we're not necessarily suggesting that needs to be embedded into the appendix. This is for our own purposes to make sure that we've covered it.
I think so. And I again, I want to make sure that that code correlation piece is getting dealt with, handled, monitored. So, okay. NFPA 13. Minimum standards of cover.
Yeah, I can start it and then I'd happy to pass it off to our fire colleagues. The where this is covered in the proposal is item 7. So if you want to scroll down, Dustin. This is again, what's mitigation. And so in the base proposal, it's requiring a full 13 system. Dustin, I don't know if you're able to bring up Washington State Code for 903.312.
One moment.
But really at 5 stories, the base code already requires an FPA 13. So where this is impactful is that a 13R is permitted 60 feet in 4 stories. Do I have that right? I'm gonna defer to my fire folks on the call.
Yep.
Okay. And so this is an enhancement so that if you're using a single exit, you would always be required, a single exit using the appendix, that you would be required to use a full 13 system. And then Dustin, if you don't mind scrolling down to the 13R scoping, thanks, that's where it is. Up to and including 4 stories in height and buildings not exceeding 60 feet above grade plane. So a 3-story building would single exit would be per the table. A 4-story single exit can be used, can use these new single exit provisions, as can a 5 and 6. But the 5 and 6 is already required to use full 13, but a 4-story, if you did per code, is permitted to use a 13R. What the WABA work group decided was to require the full 13 in all single exit buildings. And there's been debate about that, whether, whether to require it or not. But that's where we landed. And then the difference between 13R and full 13, again, I'm going to defer to my fire colleagues on that.
Yeah, Ardell, I think you hit the majority of it. The other difference between 13R and full 13, one is your flow coefficient, so you're getting double the water flow. Your 13R is 0.05, so that's for a 2-head, 26 gallons a minute, or a single head at 17 gallons a minute. When you get into your 0.1s, which is the light hazard 13, it's 35 gallons per minute. So you get more water flow onto the seat of that fire, whatever the head activates. Another big difference between the 13R and the 13 is dedicated fire line. So 13R is similar to the 13Ds, to where you can actually tap your fire line from domestic water. In this case, you get a separated dedicated fire line that runs your 13 system. And then last difference is it is a full covered system, where your 13Rs look for occupied spaces only.
I may add also that there is provisions within NFPA 13 to utilize residential design for residential dwelling units. So we're not talking upgrading into the units in particular between the 13R to 13 for these systems. It's mostly for the common areas, but it also requires attics be sprinkled, where 13R wouldn't require the attics. So there are a couple of just concessions there, but it's not going to be considerable because of the type of occupants you're looking at. It's not going to hit the residential units basically at all.
Am I correct in that? So I understand that we're only talking about the 4-story, that the 13R would cost more than, or the 13 would cost more than the 13R. Because if you're talking about a separate water line, I'm sure that's another water meter, water hookup anyway, if maybe not meter, but a water hookup.
That is correct.
Roger,
You are
no,
correct.
that's not correct from a SDC standpoint. That dedicated fire line, they don't charge you for any water meters. That goes right into the water service line. But there is a specific cost for putting the cost of the pipe in, yes.
That depends on the jurisdiction, because our jurisdiction charges for the meters. So
But
it's different. If it's a tap, it's still they charge a lot of money for the tap.
Huh. I've never seen that because it's unmetered.
Yeah.
That dedicated fire line.
They require it to be metered. That's City of Spokane.
So I'm kind of, if I were having to vote right now, I would say that is a reasonable, Ardell, what's the word you're using? Enhancement. in this case. Although I think at the end of this, we need to also be looking at the economics of it. And so I just wanted to flag that. I would be in support of this, that it makes sense to have the 13 required for 4, 5, and 6. But I think for, we do need to have that consideration for economics, and that's, you know, there's still a question in my mind, the small business and the economic impact and small business. What are we comparing it to? Because this is new code, but we at least need to make a pass at, you know, these are the cost questions. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, one of the things with the 13R versus the 13 is the 13R is still a life safety system versus the 13, it is a property protection system. And if you're going down to a single exit, I would think you would want the more robust system with the longer water duration and the higher design density in order to maintain the tenability of that space so people can get out.
Okay. Todd?
It's a good example where it would be really helpful if the subject matter experts could just briefly state the performance requirements that we're trying to achieve. So since this one there is some nuance between understanding the different systems, that would be really helpful if willing. So thank you.
So unless we hear opposition, I am going to suggest that we, under the Washington State Building Code, we have that NFPA 13 minimum standards of cover. We do need to be clear that that's for 4, 5, and 6 stories. So however it's written, and I have to go back to exactly how it's written in the proposal, I think we need to be clear that if you're doing a 3 stories, it's per code, you're probably not using the appendix, right? Isn't that right, Ardell, that we're...
Yes, you'd already be allowed to do a single exit.
Right. So, so maybe that is just in this appendix, it's required, but Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. If we were to decide that the 13R is acceptable for a 4-story building, it sounds like that's already in the requirements. So essentially, it would be a question of just striking the 13R, or sorry, the NFPA 13 requirement from the appendix, and there would still be the full 13 protection for 5 and 6 story and 13R protection for 4 story. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. If the committee makes a decision to maintain a 13R, then you would stick as base code. If the committee is seeking to maintain all single exits using the appendix as full 13, then you would maintain item 7 in the proposal.
Thank you.
And I'm fine, you know, if there is continued conversation about that, we can revisit that. I think it's a good conversation. I certainly understand it's a reasonable enhancement as far as I'm concerned, but I agree with Todd, you know, what added performance is it? Are we getting, and I also are just kind of a ROM cost, what is the cost for that enhancement? So Spencer, go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like, well, I'll just say I would prefer, I think, to keep it at the base code. So
Okay.
if you're soliciting different opinions, there's mine.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I would support keeping it as the full 13, mainly because of keeping in mind that the 13R at 4 stories is predicated on 2 exits. I mean, it's not predicated, but it assumes that you're going to have 2 exits.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's, Dustin, I guess we need to have that we will revisit that. I think there are multiple opinions, so however you're marking that, I forget exactly. Ardell, I was actually going to ask also, you seem to, I started kind of writing some things down, but eventually I think that this committee is going to have to come up with, here is a list of the enhancements. It would be a good summary as we present it to the public, certainly present it to the full council, is, you know, we've allowed a summary of, we've allowed this, here are the enhancements that we've asked for above code. So there are a list of them. I don't remember them all at this point, but eventually I think we should be able to explain that.
That's how it's listed already in the justification that's associated with the proposal.
Okay.
So if there are
okay.
items that are being stricken, then those would need to be stricken out of the justification. Again, that's included with this proposal currently.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's been
So
a
the
while since I've.
enhancement, the enhancements are identified within the proposal itself at
Okay.
in the narrative.
Okay. Thank you.
And then I guess my question, Roger, is are you requesting then that the fire folks summarize the difference between the 13D, or pardon me, the 13R and the full 13 coverage and kind of performance goals, as well as a cost summary?
I think that that is information that we will need. So for us to consider, I mean, you know, Spencer has another opinion. I'm on the fence. You know, I don't know. So I think that Ardell, I think that any of the enhancements are where we're going to have to take a look at identifying costs, or at least consider them. Is there
Sure,
an
I'm just
cost for this
asking for
enhancement?
what is the action item that you're seeking from stakeholders on the call right now
Yeah.
in order to move that conversation forward?
And I would ask for an understanding of the performance. What's the increased performance? I think a document, you know, the added water flow, is it more heads?
I think
So-
I forget who said it, but oh, Spencer's got his hand up.
Go ahead, Spencer.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think I'm not, I could certainly be convinced that, that a full 13 system makes sense. I think I'm with Todd in that, I think I just need to have a better understanding of what is it that what's the performance we're trying to get out of this. I'm hearing, for example, that the 13R system is really more about life safety. At full 13 is going to be addressing the, you know, the property, preservation of the property. I feel like I don't have the information I need to justify going to a higher standard. So that would be the information I think I would be looking for, is what is our justification for this increased, the increased cost that's going to go with this.
Okay. Derek, you want to comment? And then
Oh, I think he's well said. Like if we're in a affordable housing crisis and it's after building protection to go to the full 13, just stick with the 13R.
Okay. Well, if I think Mike and Dave and whoever else from the fire folks, if I think you hear what people are wondering, you know, what is the performance that added performance that we're getting? If you can summarize that for this group for the next meeting. Todd, are you? Mike, said a thumbs
Just
up.
to put a pin on that, it's the added performance or what performance you're trying to achieve, but also then you can also be communicated as what is the benefit, because the benefit might be worth that additional cost. And that's one of the analysis that the council frequently has to go through on these type of proposals, the cost to benefit ratio, if you want to call it that.
Correct, Todd. And backing up that, like some people's insurance will actually decrease when they know that the building is going to have better protection.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also think that that might very well be a similar conversation we have about whether you have the stretcher elevator cab versus a regular one. So Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. I will ask some of the AFSA sprinkler contractors for a quick, like, rough order of magnitude on the difference, and then I can send that to Dustin.
Okay, great.
So, and then the other question I had just quickly was, how much of this is sticking to the Seattle amendment for single exit? Or is it just kind of a rough idea that Seattle has this already and we're not trying to mirror it?
Yeah, there are provisions. This was based, I think again, the starting point was the Seattle provisions. There are more provisions here after going through this review of the Seattle provisions with the WABO single exit work group that put forth this proposal. So it's there, Chris. I mean, but at this point it belongs to the state and to dispense as they, as you guys all see fit here.
Okay. Yeah, because looking at the Seattle one, it's calling out 13 system for
Correct.
the single exit.
Mm-hmm. With the
Thanks.
reasonings that you've heard before for why. As an enhancement, let's say.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I think the last one that we haven't really touched on is the fire safety prevention and code enforcement. And I see WSRB, so I'll need somebody to re-educate me about that topic.
Let's see on that, Ardell, did you have anything? Because
Yeah,
otherwise,
I think we
occupancy.
Yeah, it's when because the WSRB has been the discussion point for how can you evaluate a fire department and what are the things that WSRB takes into account. That's why it's listed in this table. So if there's no, that's sort of built into the professional fire department rating.
Dave?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. I think it's going to be related to the professional fire department requirements, because what WSRB looks for is, once this is built, it's built. Well, who's going in and making sure they're not making changes to it? They're going to create problems. Very significant one that occurred a few years ago was the Grenfell Tower in England, where the building was built to meet code, and they added stuff to the building later. It resulted in a single stair building that had a significant fire, with 74 people lost with that. So there needs to be some kind of program to making sure that these facilities are not altered so that they would step away from what the original approval is. And that's something I think that we're going to have to put in with the professional fire department. They're going to have company engine inspections of buildings or something like that, just to be able to make sure that they're going to be maintained as to what they originally were approved for.
Okay. I thought that we did talk about this, and I remember that any changes, once it's built, it becomes an existing building, and it's difficult for a building code to make requirements that are past certificate of occupancy. Is that not, from a code enforcement? I think that's pretty.
In most of the jurisdictions that do have a separate building and separate fire department, the building code builds the building, the fire department takes care of it after it's built.
Okay. Would it make sense for that particular item to be moved up with the professional fire department discussion, Dave? And your group can address that at the next meeting?
You can.
As part of that? I mean, I think that would make sense to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
On the mic, unless you have a difference in opinion.
No, I'm with you, bud.
Am I still connected?
Yes.
All right. So somebody's PC just disconnected. I don't know whose. So that's through our list. I am open to going back and starting to review however people are interested. I'm going to suggest that we take a break. We've been going for an hour and 10 minutes. We come back at 2:20 and we will have an hour and 40 minutes, and we can start going back through those that additional clarity or additional discussion is needed. And I'm open to if there are experts here that want to weigh in on specific items, I'm fine jumping around a little bit as long as it makes some sense. So I would say we would just start from the top. However, I know there was an elevator. John had already some questions. So if it makes sense for us to dig back into some of those that are not at the top of the page, I'm fine with that. So, okay. So think about what we want to jump into next, and let's take a break until 2:20.
It's 19-27115.
Title is not very, doesn't make sense, but okay.
It doesn't help you find it easy, that's for sure.
No. Okay. Well, I will call the meeting back to order. And I am going to just suggest, if anybody has a burning desire to speak about something in particular, Patrick.
I'm going to offer my friendly suggestion, having gone through a couple tags now.
Yes.
What I found, the two things I found really helpful. So for the IRC is we did a first hearing on all of our proposals, which you've kind of done. You've, kind of initially talked about all the topics, but then we set a date to when we were going to come back and talk about those again. And then combining that with on the energy tag, typically we had grouped things by topic, and Shell would kind of plan it out, but we didn't always know exactly ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think instead of going through and just kind of talking about everything at any meeting, that could soak up a lot of time. It might be helpful if you just take the time today to plan out. You have 3 or 4 meetings for the rest of the year. What meetings do you want to talk about? Which items do you need to form work groups on anything, and when do they need to come back with finalized results for the tag to work through? So that's just my friendly suggestion.
I appreciate it very much, and I think what I maybe will do is if we spend the next till 3:30 going back through some of these items, we may be able to come to an agreement at this point on some of them and be able to move them. If not, then we can spend the last half hour kind of grouping them, and we can make a plan. So, okay. So I'm gonna, again, unless there is a comment, I am gonna start up at the top again. And the first one that we have is this definition of 6 stories and whether the number of stories that are served by the single exit. And whether that meets the intent and or the language of the RCW, which is why I was asking Dustin to kind of bring that back up. If you could bring the RCW back up. When I read this, so the question on number 1 and 2 is it's 6 stories. Whether we are allowing 6 stories, however, the single exit only serves the upper 5, right? And the ground floor is served by either direct exit from the units or a different means. So question number one is, do we meet the language of the code? And when I read the first sentence, limitations to the IBC that would allow for a single exit stairway to serve multifamily residential structures up to 6 stories. This is my opinion, but by allowing a 6-story where the upper 5 levels are served by the single exit and the ground floor is served by another means of exiting, that would be recommendations. That would allow for a single exit stairway to serve multifamily residential structures up to 6 stories above grade. I think that if we limit it to 5 stories for the single exit, I believe that we are meeting the RCW. I don't have a legal opinion. That's my opinion, but so then there is the question, do we allow the single exit, basically all 6 stories, to go through the single exit and exit out? Is that, Ardella, am I saying anything that contrary to your understanding?
Yep, that's correct. So this, I think there's a question like, how much does this just match the Seattle provisions? This is language that matches the Seattle provisions. Some of this is sort of the historic evolution of this code change is around how far ahead of the model code do you want to be, right? So a single exit is permitted by the tables in chapter 10 in an R2 or 3-story building currently. And the Seattle cap is to allow it up to a 6-story building, but as Roger just described, to serve the upper 5 stories. And this hasn't been a problem per se as a limitation that I'm aware of around the Seattle provisions as far as design professionals wanting to eliminate it or asking to eliminate that this language, but this tag could, yes, make a recommendation to strike not more than 5 stories and just allow the single exit to serve all 6 stories. I think what becomes kind of a question is typically the single exit continues down and then a single exit cannot discharge into a lobby. It has to discharge direct to the building exterior and then continue to the right of way with the exit discharge provisions. And so I don't think it's been an issue because at the ground floor, there's an entrance to the apartment building, and because that single exit's not allowed to discharge through that ground floor lobby, that providing egress to the first story is as independent from the stair, the single exit, hasn't been problematic. What I'm saying is there's other code provisions that would still require that exit stair to go and discharge directly to the building exterior.
So would the first floor exit through the lobby typically?
Correct. Typically, yes.
And if I am a resident and want to get up to my 6th floor apartment, do I go through the lobby?
And there's a convenience opening into the stair, but it's not the required exit
And then if
from the
I'm
building.
exiting in a fire, I would not be allowed to go into the lobby. I would have to go out the exit corridor to the outside.
Yeah, that door doesn't lock per se, but all signage and egress is the egress plan is to go directly to the building exterior.
Okay. Spencer, I saw your hand go up. Did
You
Is that a
asked,
question?
you asked my question for me. I wanted to, it was my recollection too, that there could be a doorway that communicates between
Yep.
the stairwell and the lobby. So,
Okay. I'm hesitant to have too much influence, but I'm going to suggest I'm fine keeping the top 5, that the exit serves the top 5. And but it does allow for 6 stories. Derek has a thumbs up. Is there anybody vehemently opposed to moving that over to keeping the top 5? Patrick?
I'm just kind of wondering what's the rationale for not letting just one stairway for all 6 stories.
It's just again limiting how many units are exposed. Right, so right now we've got 4 units per floor on 5 stories, so that's 20 units that's caps at. The model code allows 3 stories with 4 units, and so it's just how much above that do you want to increase above model code, which again increases the exposure.
So Patrick, they can still exit if they want to go through that convenience store and go out that stairwell, like Ardell was talking about. They still can.
John, go ahead as well if you've got a.
Yeah, the issue is, as Ardell said, is exposure. It's also, when you add that 6th floor, if that's their only way out, you're also exposing the upper floors to the many more units, right? So you're trying to, fire goes up, or smoke and flame, heat goes up. And so the more you put down below, the more exposure you get up above. That's the, potential for exposure to the stair. I also want to point out, just to be careful, it's not necessary, depending what we decide on one of the other provisions about communication between other areas of the building and the single stair, it may not be just a single door that you go through to get from the lobby to the stair, or from the stair to the lobby. I think right now as I recall anyway, I haven't gone back to look, we're still saying you can't have direct communication with a stair, which would mean generally there's a more than one door between the space. But that's something I think that is a topic for that's still to be discussed.
Okay, and I also know that it is my hot topic of whether it's only 4 units per floor, or do you allow 6 units per floor and have a square foot limit, which means you would be exiting the same occupant load out of that stair. And if we could come up with a 6 unit per floor with a square foot limit and talk about the occupant level, but make it clear that you're only exiting the upper 5 floors and the first floor is exiting another way, I think that would be a benefit. You would be able to get more units in the same building and the same footprint. So I'm gonna ask Dustin. I see the exit access travel clearance. Maybe if I move my list. Yeah, row 9 and 10 are connected to row 5. So this is what I'm gonna, taking Patrick's suggestion to, revisit it today, but we will figure out a day when we're going to address that. And then if the communication that John mentioned, I don't know what level, what row that is. John, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was waiting to, I thought are we gonna discuss the number of units, or are you just trying to group things right now?
Well, I go ahead. Let's talk about the number of units. I do think, since they are related, I'm not convinced that we're going to completely sign off on one or all of these, but let's have this to continue the discussions. So,
Okay. Yeah, I think it's the number of units is the same issue. It's how many separate spaces that is not under one person's control are you exposing to the stair? And it kind of goes to what Ardell said earlier. Right now, the proposal is 4 units on 5 stories, so that's 20 units exposed that are exposed to the stair, and that's their only exit. If you start going to 6 units on 5 stories at 30 units, it's 6 units per story, 5 units or sorry, 5 stories, you're talking 30 units, and that's a fairly significant increase, right? So the difficulty is again, that's just that much more exposure, and to me that's the increased hazard that we would be really concerned about. And if we go there, then what are the things that we're doing to mitigate that hazard?
and John, I would ask the study, what is it, because I understand the number of spaces that you don't have control over as being one part of that conversation, but I also think that it is the number of occupants that would exit that stair. And so what I would be curious is, in a 6-story building, is there a limit? 6-story building with 2 exits, is there a limit to the number of units?
It's huge.
Yeah, it's
I know.
440, right?
Right.
So it's huge.
440 units or people?
Occupants. At 200 square
Occupants.
foot per occupant, that's
Right.
a huge floor plate. Sorry, I can't do that math.
Yeah, it depends on how big the doors are to the stairs and the width of the stairs and some other things too, but
Well,
and distance of travel and a whole bunch of other things. But yeah, you get big numbers of people. And
so,
and my thought is that my opinion is that the number of occupants is fairly irrelevant in a building of this size.
Right.
It's small compared to what would be allowed. It's more, to me, because you notice that at least in Seattle provisions and in the Wagner proposal, there's nothing about occupant load limit. And because it's a small number for these buildings. So given the travel distance, given all the other things, it's not going to be a real big number.
So I still would be interested in the comparison of number of units. It's more than double, right? You said six units per floor at 5 floors is 30. I understand that, and that is a lot more than 20. But if in a 2 exit scenario, and don't even talk about a maximum, but just talk about kind of your typical, how many units per stair are the number of units that you don't have control over. And if that is 200, and we're talking about 30 for a single stair, but on a 2-stair you can get to 200. I think that that's something that we could, if it's 60, I don't know what that number is. If it is significantly higher, then I really question whether the risk that you're talking about, and even John, I would go back to, is there a 25-foot dead end corridor or a 20-foot? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's 25, and depending, it could be up to 50.
Okay. So if it's 50, how many at 5 floors? How many units is that typically going to be? It's going to want to go out of that really only has the one exit because, you know, theoretically there's a fire someplace. So we've come to an agreement that at 25 feet, is that 4 units? You know, would need to go to that single stair on all of the other ones. Let's say a fire started right past the 25, right past the exit. So everybody in that 25-foot dead end corridor had to go out the single exit. Everybody else went to the second exit. You know, it's got to be at least 4, if not 6. It seems to me like it's a similar number.
Potentially, yeah, it can be higher number depending on the size of the units. Obviously, if you got,
yeah,
you know, micro housing units, then it's going to be more.
Right,
But,
exactly. So,
but yeah, so I understood and concede, you know, I'll concede that, but still, again, that's on a single floor. You know, so yes, you got people on a single floor who are exposed to that and that number of units on that dead end. But what we're talking about here is exposing multiple people on multiple floors, which is different to me.
This is where I think maybe we need to schedule a time ahead of time because I just am seeing in my head that a floor plate with a 25-foot dead end corridor to a stair, you're in a similar situation.
No, you're not. Well, it's 25 foot to a place where you can go 2 directions. That's what a dead end is.
Okay.
So, yeah, you still have still have 2 stairs on the floor.
Okay. I think I would like to see some floor plates and to be able to present my argument. And I don't know, Spencer, go ahead. I don't want to be, if I'm the only one pushing for this, I don't want to hold up everything, but so Spencer.
Well, I agree it'd be helpful to look through floor plates and maybe some examples or something. My question is, if the concern is the total number of units that could be impacting potentially that top floor, would it be reasonable to limit the total number of units that communicate onto that stairwell and not limit it to a certain number per floor? So I mean, if you have like a 4 or a 5-story building, maybe it's more acceptable to have 6 units on each floor. Whereas if you're going to do a 6-story building, then maybe that concern is greater and you limit it to 4. I'm just trying to think through other ways to be flexible about it.
It seems like a reasonable suggestion, but John, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I understand John Sue's point, but I also think that 4 is a rather arbitrary number, that if there are 4 CDUs, that's different than 4 3-bedroom units. So just want to, you know, figure it out from maybe there's a different way to attack that.
Or you can maybe attack it with a bedroom count.
John, go ahead.
I don't think you want to get into bedrooms. We have so many arguments about what's a bedroom versus a den versus study versus a whole bunch of other things. I don't want to get into that. But
well, my thoughts going alongside the health department and how they use bedroom counts for their septic capacity design. That's all.
Yeah,
it's 2 adults per bedroom. That was just where my thoughts were coming from.
Yeah. And to John Hall's point, I think each unit, regardless of size, is a source of fire, right? And I think that's what we're concerned about. Each one has a cooking unit of some kind, which is generally one of the higher incidences of fire, but not necessarily the only one. And each one has an opening onto whatever it is, the corridor that goes to the stair. And so, and then to the stair. Each one of those, like I said, is a source. And so I don't think it matters whether it's a CDU versus a 1-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom. It's still, you know, a unit that is under control of one person.
Dave,
John,
go ahead.
I just had a
Yeah,
question. Does anybody on the call know the basis? Because again, going back to the model code, the model code single exit buildings are also capped at 4 units per story. So that's, I think, part of the carryover here is again, how far beyond the model code do you want to be? And when in doing so, what are the mitigation or justification for doing so? So does anybody have the history on why it's 4 in on the table?
That has to be something we'd have to look at. And when did that go into the table and think, when did they bring the table in and things like that? I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
Don't remember if that was in the you know, original IBC, yeah, the original IBC in 2000, or if it came in later. That'd be a research project.
Thanks.
Dave, go ahead.
Basically, Ardell kind of brought up what I was going to bring up as well. So I've been doing a little bit of research. As I know, the 2027 IBC, the discussions, Jeff Shapiro, the International Code Consultant, says he's been involved in code development for quite some time, a name that a lot of us know. He is one who put together the current proposal for the 2027 of basically increasing the capacity of the single stair type of units. And he, in his proposal, he has the table that he's just limiting it to 4 per floor. He has the requirements within it, NFPA 13 as well. So I'm just kind of suggesting is, I don't think we want to stray too far away from what the model code is, because that there's already been a lot of discussion about it at that level. If we're stepping out of that, I think we're opening up ourselves to some other problems. So I strongly recommend that we take a look at what they're looking at for the 2027 code. It may be something that Dustin could us a copy of what that proposal is, or I know that John and others are involved in some of the hearings and stuff as well. But that is what I've been hearing of things. So looking at where things are at, I think we need to look at the basis of a lot of these things. If we're pushing to go to 6, and I'm going to make another statement after I'm done with this, but if we're going to go to 6, we need to seriously look at it. The other thing I'm going to bring up is something I bring up regularly, as I've heard a couple of times today, affordable housing. I have yet to see an affordable housing permit applied for. Affordable housing is the market rate. It has nothing to do with the cost of the construction of the facility. It's the market rate at which the units are going to be rented for. Keep that in mind.
Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think even if we do 4 units up to 6 stories, it's gonna make I think we'll be one of the first states to adopt that in the US. So that'll in of itself will be huge. But I've been trying to do like a little bit of research into internationally. It seems like there's some places like Germany and Switzerland that are a little more performance based, that allow much higher high limits, like up to 15, 20 stories. But I think they allow less units per floor. But going back to kind of the comments on, well, it's, you know, it's a number of units risk factor thing. I kind of understand that, but I'm wondering just where the sort of the data is behind that, or is it just kind of an eyeball thing of what you feel like is comfortable? Because I think there's other codes that have found a higher threshold that they're more comfortable with, and perhaps it's, I think in Germany you can only go up that high if you have like a smoke proof stairway. So it might be, you know, different requirements you have to have if you want to go up to a certain height. But I think there's some room to kind of expand on the number of dwelling units that are served by a single exit stairway. Thank you.
Rich?
Sorry, I'm mobile today. Apologies for that. I think John's point about risk is true. What we're seeing in all of our fire data even in an affluent area, is that number one cause of fires are cooking fires typically. But we've also seen a lot of these more affordable housing type units, or housing units are built under the concept of affordability. They are market rate to today's point. The other big fire that we're seeing besides the cooking fires is the mobility device fires. And so as we talk about smaller units and higher density and lack of parking and all that stuff, we're going to see a higher increase in use of micromobility devices, e-scooters, e-bikes, hoverboards, skateboards, et cetera, and the failure rate on those. I don't know that the fire service or even the industry that's producing those truly understands the risk that those find. But when they do ignite and when they do fail, they're quite spectacular and they're quite large fires quite rapidly, which I think talks to the idea of limiting how many units we should have exiting to a stair. And also, when we start talking about fire sprinklers and the application of water, I think is very germane to that conversation about how do we protect against those types of fires that I think, again, the industry is still struggling to get their heads wrapped around, as the manufacturing side of it well outstrips the code compliance and code writing side of the house. Thank you.
Okay, Patrick, if I can just step in, the one thing that I completely I recognize the concern about going too far beyond the model code. The current proposal in the city of Seattle allows 24 units, right? 6 times 4. Our proposal currently is 5 times 4, 5 levels on this particular stair, 5 times 4. Or no, 6 floors times 4 units, so 24. When you're talking about the risk and the number of units and the number of cooking kitchens, and I struggle with the idea of having 6 units on 4 stories, how that would be more risky than 6 floors of 4 units on a single stair. In fact, in my mind, it would be less because you've only got 4 levels to go down rather than 6 as far as exiting out the stair. So that's why that argument of 24 units, a limit of 24 units, or maybe you make it 25 if somebody came up with a 5 unit for 5 floors, but that makes sense to me. And it isn't necessarily, I know I've said low income, it is meant to be housing affordability, make it more cost effective to build that. That's the driver behind the RCW. So Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of had a follow-up question for Rich that I've been wondering about with the increase of batteries that we're putting into homes, like in single family homes, having EVs that you're storing in your garage, maybe even a battery for your house. And then you brought up, all the kinds of devices that can have pretty large batteries nowadays. Are sprinkler systems, how effective are the 13 sprinkler systems at dealing with electrical fires from batteries? Does anybody know?
I can't speak to a national standard on that, Patrick, but I think locally within Redmond, we're seeing the full NFPA 13 system be fairly effective as long as they're in an area that's being protected by that sprinkler system, right? And the difficult thing that we're seeing is that they're storing their scooters and their hoverboards and their skateboards under their beds or in their closets or behind their stuff. And so it kind of anything and everything when we're limiting the space that someone can live in, we're not necessarily limiting the amount of stuff they can have in that space. And so they tend to be a higher density and a higher fuel load, and they tend to have more of those mobility devices. And so, overall, we're seeing very good actually results with full NFPA 13 systems for cooking fires and these micro mobility devices in residential type situations. When we start talking things like automobiles and large, Tesla walls and house power backup systems and that stuff, I don't know that we have enough data to really make a conversation on that yet, especially when we're in residential areas. Even though, you know, a garage in a residential area, you'd have a higher water application rate. I don't know we have enough data to say that they're being super effective there yet or not. Again, there's UL and NFPA and others are doing a lot of research and a lot of full-scale fire testing, trying to understand how best to protect commercial buildings, let alone the residential buildings on these things.
All right, thank you.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you know, point out, Roger, that Seattle only allows you get the 4 units on 5 stories, so it's only 20 units, not 24. Just so it is going from 20 to 30, what we're talking about here.
Or my suggestion is,
If
okay,
you
or
want to cap
my
the number of
suggestion,
units, that's what we're comparing. That's
Yeah.
all I want to say. You know, right now, Seattle allows 20. If you go to 6 stories, you know, or sorry, 5 stories and 6 units, that's 30. If we're going to cap it to somewhere in between that, I mean, that's certainly you know, that what we're here to discuss. But I just want to make sure that we're using the right baseline.
well, that's why I shouldn't do math without my calculator, even though I'm an engineer. My point still would be, if 20 is the number, making the change to limiting it to 20 units still allows somebody who wants to build a 4-story to do 5 units on that 4-story. And I don't see where the risk is increased. Maybe we go to 24. I mean, that's a conversation that we could have, but
yeah.
So.
Okay.
I'm not
I mean, go ahead.
understanding, Roger. I'm not actually tracking your math.
Well, if there are, so 5 stories, John's saying out of the single exit, there are 5 stories of 4 units in the current proposal. So there are 20 units that are being served by that single exit.
Correct.
If we said 20 units was the cap rather than 4 per floor, if I wanted to build 4 stories or a 5-story building, so 4 were served by the single stair, I could do 5 units, just still 20 units on a total of 5-story building with 4 being served by the stair. And we haven't increased the number of units, the number of kitchens, or the number of units. So I don't see where the risk is any different.
Yeah.
John?
Roger, I'm not objecting to that per se. I just need to think about that a little more. I mean, obviously that's a new idea to think about, and one worth discussing. And I think the other saving grace from my standpoint is that you still got the limited travel distance, and so that'll also somewhat limit the number of units and how big the units get and how many people. So I think all that works together. That may be a very viable way to look at it. I just haven't had time to think about that.
Okay. And in my brain, anyway, I would think that the travel distance limit would not be increased. It's still the same. You know, whether that 1 extra unit on the 4-story is a small studio unit, who knows? That's for the market to determine. But if we maintain the travel distance, we are in, you know, this is maybe a trade-off, but I would suggest we're going with the 13R or 13, not the 13R, if you're 4 and 5 stories. So, you know, we have increased the sprinkler to the more enhanced sprinkler system. That just makes some sense to me. So, John, there was one other item that you had down below that you thought connected to that. What was that? All right, let's go.
I don't know. When we get to it, we can.
Okay. I'm going to say that yeah, go ahead, Ardell.
I don't know if I'm able to share screen, but can I sketch this out? Is that something that would be helpful for people to see?
Sure.
Yeah. And Roger, I do have an answer to your question, but we can wait. We can let Ardell go.
Okay.
Sorry, this is super crude. So bear with me here. Wrong. Sorry. Let
Hey,
me stop
Roger, while
sharing.
Ardell's
Yes.
sketching that,
Yes.
you're suggesting a language that would say not more than 5 stories can maybe served by a single stair, and not more than 20 units or 24 units, whatever the number is. So it would be like an either or statement.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So
and it would replace the limit of 4 units per floor, just
Yeah.
by a total number of units. So,
Okay.
okay.
To make sure I'm tracking.
So in the top left here is what the current proposal is, which is 4 units per floor. For 5 stories, that's 20 units. This is a separate egress system that exits directly to grade and can go through that, as we discussed. And this is the stair. The model code is 4 units up to 3 stories, can use a single exit. What you're proposing, Roger, would still be, I think, matching this base proposal for a 6-story, but what I heard was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 floors with 5 units each, so this gets capped at 20 units still, or even taking it down to a 4-story. Do you get 6 or 7? Still, is this still 20 units? I mean, it could grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or some.
That's 21, but
I don't know. That's what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure I'm understanding what you're suggesting right now.
What you have there is exactly what I'm suggesting. And I
Okay.
think the risks that we've talked about are the number of kitchens, that may start a fire. And I understand that concept, but the 2 blue ones on the bottom don't make any difference. You haven't increased over the one on the upper left. Maintaining all of the exit pathway, 125 feet, I think it is. So we're not making, 5 4,000 square foot units. They're not massive units. And part of this is we're going with the 13 sprinkler system, not the 13R.
So I could imagine.
So
I can imagine a developer on either of those do a single unit on the top 2 floors and aggregate and congregate micro units on the first and second floors. Is that an issue if they were to, do a 350 square foot micro SRO type units with kitchens, where you'd still not have an issue with travel distance, but you'd have a much larger occupant load on a single floor and have a very low occupant load on the upper floor. So you'd still be under the total unit count being served by that single stair, but you'd have a loading issue coming off one floor.
And Todd, I'll get to you. And I'm feel like I'm the one defending this, but I guess it's my proposal. I heard John Sue say that the overall occupant load isn't as big of an issue. In John's mind, it's more the number of units. I would still, and in fact, one of the other items I thought was at one point, do we put a square foot limit on it? And that may be part of it, Rich, to get your concern. I would question on this number of levels, transferring all the plumbing and potentially the structural framing as well, would be a cost challenge, particularly the plumbing to do what you've said. Now, could it be, Ardell's shown 6 over 7? Even that might be a bit of a challenge just for the one, when you're talking a 10-story building or a 20-story building, you may modify the unit layouts because you can accommodate the added cost of the plumbing, transfers that you need to do. But on this number, I question whether that would really be economically viable. But I don't know. I'm open It seems to make sense to me, but
Keep
Todd,
going,
go
Roger.
ahead.
I'm backing you up. I think it's a great idea. I just kept quiet on the side, but Todd's got his hand up.
Todd, go ahead.
Well, I want to thank you, Ardell, for doing the sketch because I mean, ultimately, we're doing a design problem here. We're designing a prescriptive code, a solution for a kind of problem that's not really set, but we're having to define the problem at the same time. One of the reasons I'm here and I'm trying to unpack and help, you know, one thing I've been thinking about is in the performance code is when you make the matrices of the different performance levels and then the acceptable levels of risk, you know, from the mild, moderate, high, and very high or severe or whatever it's called. Would that be a helpful exercise and break this apart a little more where we say, here's a risk category we have to address, and we might go 1 to 6 units in the vertical and 1 to 6 units, 1 to 6 stories in the vertical, 1 to 6 units on the horizontal. And I think we can start filling in that matrix and see those bands of what is acceptable in each one of those categories, and probably pretty quickly come to acceptable balance between those risks, and then where we have more severe, we have to have some sort of mitigation or not allow it. And so I'd like to think through that a little bit and bring it to the group, and whether it's used or not, I just appreciate this kind of complexity questioning. So thank you.
John, go ahead.
Yeah. So in answer to Rich, I think the number of actual people is going to be, I don't think there's going to be a bottlenecking just based on that. You know, you're going to be limited still by the overall travel distance, the 125 feet, and the 20 feet to the stair. So you got 20 feet from your door to your unit to get to a stair, assuming we don't change that. And so that's going to limit the number of units to begin with. It'll, you know, there's only so many doors you can fit in that space viably. And even so, you know, a capacity theoretically of a door is pretty high when you look at the width versus the occupant load. So, you know, theoretically, you can get like what is it, 0.2 inches per person, something I can't remember. Anyway, there's a number. You get some big numbers. So I don't think the door, it's the number of people on a floor will be the issue.
Yeah, builders are very creative, and architects and engineers are very creative, and when we see it on the other side, it's kind of mulling through Roger's proposal.
Oh, believe me, yes, I know what you're talking about. However, I think the other safeguards in other guardrails in the system in the proposal will prevent some of that, you know, from going too far. And I had something I was going to say to Roger, but I forget what that was. So just the other issue that is related was the exiting through other occupancies, and that's on the matrix, and that's like on the let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4th page up, no, 5th page. Where is it? Sorry. 1, 2, and bottom of the 3rd page. Yeah, that one. Oh, okay. I'm looking at the PDF.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move that up. I'm not sure that we're going to decide today, so let's move that up and we'll consider those together for sure. I am thinking that we want to move on, although being on the designer side, it actually, the 5-story building with 5 units per floor structurally makes a whole lot of sense, because you can do that all in wood. You don't have to do a concrete podium and then do 5 stories of wood above. I think that can be a very efficient structural system at 5 stories of wood where you've got the single stair. So Spencer?
Just wanted to register my support for I think where you're going with this, Roger and Ardell, what you've sketched out. I think the added flexibility is probably really important for some of the design challenges that people are dealing with in these infill situations.
So I'm gonna go ahead and move us along. Ardell, or can you, I think that your rough sketch is very helpful for people to see. I think if Dustin, we can make sure that we get that out for everybody to look at when they're starting to consider it. I think it will be helpful for people to think through it. So
Ardell, could you send that over to me by any chance?
Sorry, please redraw it. No, I'm
if,
kidding.
if you wanna email it to me and
That's fine.
I won't stamp it, but I'll put it on a
Yeah.
DCI thing and I'll send it along.
Sure. There was
Thank
just to be, you know, that again, this is being discussed at the national level. There was a version of a proposal that did go to national that was basement through 6th with 4 units per story, or basement through 3rd with 6 units per story. So recognizing the conflict that this potentially creates with the table by allowing more units than just the base table of a 3-story building. So it's this idea of sort of cap it at the number of units and then shift the allowable number of units per story depending on the stories above grade plane. Just putting it out there. I'll send you the sketch.
Yes,
Thank
and I think anybody that's working on the 27 code, I'm certainly interested in the conversations, and John, also the history. I think whenever we prepare to address this issue again and hopefully get a resolution, I think we should have all of that information available to us. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, okay, so the real quick history, for what I was able to determine in 5 minutes is the table with 4 units per story was in the original 2000 IBC, so the 1.0 version. I do not know, I do not have records of that. I do not know if ICC still has records of how they got through the drafting process and all the reasons and everything else. We'd have to ask them to see if there was any commentary or anything like that for the 2000 version that we could lay our hands on. But who knows? Those are back in the days of paper. So, but that's what I was able to find. The 1997 UBC, which was the state code up until 2004, 2003.
Yeah.
2004 was the UBC did not allow single exit anywhere, essentially, except with some minor, you know, things. They didn't allow anything like this, and so the Seattle Amendment was the only one that allowed the single exit, as far as I can see.
Okay, thank you for that. I was gonna say I'm getting to that point where I'm trying to figure out how many of my 1985 UBCs do I really need to keep it, or should I get rid of it? But, okay, one of each. I'm also wondering, so I'm looking at the other yellow ones down on the table, and I see maximum square footage. See dwelling units per floor. I think that we maybe should move that up as well, Dustin. I think that that's kind of related to the conversation that we just had.
Roger, since it was brought
yeah.
up previously, do you want to tackle the generator
Sure.
or the conveyance?
Yes.
I don't know if those are two sort of quicker.
Yes.
Potentially.
I don't know where those are.
Under pressurization, number 26.
Okay.
And the WABO proposal is to permit legally required standby power. The 24 GP1-114 is a 2024 code change proposal to align what legally required standby power is in the story increase in chapter 5, I believe. Is that right, Dustin?
I have to double check.
So, John, you had brought this question up earlier in this discussion. I'm not sure if you knew that was the current proposal.
John Hall.
Yeah.
John Hall, sorry.
I did not, I was reacting to, I believe it was something that was stating that tap ahead of the main power would not be allowed as standby power in this code.
And that's consistent with the state, John, on the increase for the added story. I know that Seattle has a different allowance.
Right. So is that then punishing Seattle and Bellevue and maybe other jurisdictions that do allow tap ahead of the main, that would not be allowed in this proposal?
I think it would I would interpret that as it's up to the local. It's that the local jurisdiction could make that amendment still. I would. But as a state proposal, I think if you're going to allow tap ahead of the main in this appendix, then it needs to be discussed as well with other legally required standby power requirements in at the state.
Yeah, I was just seeing that. I was thinking that this proposal would allow legally required standby power, and then it's up to each jurisdiction. I was seeing that this actually prohibited tap ahead of the main power in this proposal, which then would not allow Seattle to use tap ahead of the main. That makes sense.
Yeah, John, I think the idea, I think what Ardell is saying, though, I think with certain caveats that the jurisdiction could amend this, and I would expect.
I will continue to push for the amendment.
Yeah.
Locally, similarly to how we currently allow that amendment for where the state would not allow it for the story increase, we allow it for the story increase.
We have different, Seattle has different requirements for the story increase even, so, yeah.
Correct.
Thanks.
Can I get clarity? So the differences you're talking about is standby power is a generator or tapping in directly to the, is it like a second tap into the main power? Again, not a non-electrical engineer.
Dustin, are you able to bring up 24 GP1-114?
Yes.
Yeah. Roger, real quickly, I mean, I'm not an electrical engineer either, but having dealt with this for a while, and the controversy, quite frankly, over tap ahead of the main, there you can have there are different ways of doing what they call reliable source of power, or second, what we call standby. And one of them is a generator. The other one that other people, I know other people have used is two supply from two different grids. So like some buildings, they have access to power, to like I know downtown they have Seattle City Light has two different grids that kind of go through there, and you can tap into them separately. And so you've got a second source of power that's reliable. The assumption being that you don't lose both of them at the same time. I don't know some of the other ones, but the other one that I'm familiar with is tap ahead of the main. And basically you have one line that comes to the property, as I understand it. One goes directly to the panel, your normal panel, so that's your normal power. And then there's another one that goes a tap off of that then goes to a separate panel, and then there's a transfer switch that flips on if the main panel loses power. And some people do not consider that to be a reliable source of power, because if the grid goes down, then building loses both sources of power. So there's no backup if the whole grid goes down. Seattle has accepted that if the whole grid goes down, the way I put it myself, the way I think about it, is if the whole grid goes down, you've got other problems.
Okay. So where are we at with the?
So
Well, I've got the 114 pulled up, and looking at the standby power sections, they all refer to 2702, but is there anywhere specific in here you want me to navigate to, Ardell?
no, I just want to flag that the language in the appendix should be consistent with the language here on, for the purposes of this section, the last sentence, legally required standby power shall comply with NFPA 70. And this code change proposal is to align this section with the updated NEC, right? With the updated NFPA language. And so wherever the building code tag ends on the recommendation on this section, the single exit appendix should have the same language. That's the language in yellow, is just correlate standby power with this proposal. It's the same requirement for legally required standby power, and it should be consistent through the state code.
And I think items 1 through 4 are the kind of the different options that are available. Does not mention tap ahead of the main.
So that would still be the city of Seattle, and remind me, with the city of Seattle or the city of Bellevue then have to come and petition the state building code council? Or is that a code interpretation?
That is a
local amendment.
Local amendment, yeah. It's different than the residential code, Roger, which would be which would need to go to state building code council.
But isn't this a residential? So
this is a change to the building code. So there's the codes that require that local jurisdictions are not allowed to make technical changes are residential code buildings.
Yeah. And the definition of a multifamily building in that case, Roger, is 2 or fewer stories, 4 or fewer units, 5,000 square feet or less. So that's the restriction. Actually, it doesn't refer directly to the IRC, but I think the interpretation has been to expand that to the IRC.
All right, thank you. That clarifies it for me. Okay. I would agree with Ardell that if assuming the code change proposal 114 is approved, and I recall going through this at the IBC tag, we should be consistent with that, with proposal 114.
Okay. So then,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so does that resolve row 26?
I think there's still an action item for you, Dustin.
Yeah, I'm not gonna delete the message. I'm just gonna remove the highlight.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the other item that was brought up today was the stretcher. I don't know. I think Todd, that was you. Is that one you wanted to bring up in today?
Sorry, did you just call on me?
Yeah, you had brought up the stretcher requirement for conveyance.
Thank you. Yep.
So
Just
I was
dialed back in.
trying to come back to it instead of taking on sort of another.
So it's more of a
block.
legislative request. It's obviously did not pass. So it's a question that comes to the council, and if there are any opinions can be given here on for or against, it would just be helpful as we have a meeting in October with the legislature.
So does everybody on the call know the issue? Maybe not. Todd,
Go
do you
ahead
want to
and
summarize it, or do you want me to bring that up?
I think you're probably better qualified. I could fumble around, but I think others on this call probably could do it better than I could. Thank you.
Hold on, let me pull up the state code requirement. Dustin, are you able to bring up the stretcher requirement that's in Washington code? I believe it's in 30. Seattle moves it around, so I apologize.
Yeah, it's chapter 30. Give me one moment.
Jonathan, do you have a comment while they're pulling that up?
One of the another thing that went with the changing of the stretcher sized elevator was to take elevators to an ISO standard. And the industry was really against that because there's no qualified mechanics for an ISO standard. There's no qualified inspectors for an ISO standard. And if my elevator inspectors inspect to an ISO standard, they will lose their current certifications.
Yep. This is the requirement, and it's any R1, R2, or I occupancy, regardless of the number of stories. At least one elevator shall provide fire department emergency access to all floors. And so the proposal that's gone through both at state and to the national for the 27 code is to, as Jonathan noted, to revise the elevator standard to the ISO standard, which is a European standard, from the current requirement, which is an ASME, I think it's 17.1. And that would allow for a smaller, if you remove the stretcher requirement then you would free up more space because you'd have a smaller elevator, and that could be used for units.
Todd?
And Dustin, are you able to kind of summarize the homework we did on this as a council, but a little bit with the legislature on the ASME potential pathway?
So, I mean, I think the biggest point of contention is that L&I does all of the elevator inspections in things across the state of Washington. In my discussions with the elevator division of L&I, they indicate that a non-stretcher size elevator can be installed per the standards that they have adopted, and I believe is the ASME standards. And so some of our code language here requiring the stretcher size car outright for these certain occupancies goes a little bit contrary to the direction that the legislature is looking. Not only would we gain a little more space in each floor plate with a smaller elevator, but the thought is that the cost goes down significantly for smaller elevators that aren't stretcher size capacity. But I think my main concern would be how if we adopted any sort of ISO standard into our code, that the L&I folks, they would still be inspecting and permitting through the ASME standards.
Dave?
Yeah, just to clarify, City of Seattle and City of Spokane also do inspections of elevators in their jurisdictions. So I've been involved pretty heavily with the bill, with the way it was originally worded, and a lot of research as well. Jonathan Goldsmith and I had a lot of discussions on this. One of the things that is very concerning with the ISO requirements is it does not have nearly the number of safeties that the ASME requirements have. So that's a big reason why they're cheaper, is they're less safe. They're willing to take on more risk in other countries than we are here. So that's a big concern for us. And literally the cost to become properly certified for the ISO is very, very challenging to do that. And as John indicated, once you have one, you can't have the other one. So it just, at this point, I think it's interesting to look into, but I see a number of safety issues with this, a number of concerns of how we're going to be able to address getting inspections done. If this is passed, it's going to take a considerable amount of time to get people to get properly certified in this. And it's not like we have people that are certified in one of the others through the state. We all have the ASME. We don't have ISO. So from the fire marshal standpoint, we are very much against going to the ISO standard.
Don?
Yes, I think this helps clarify. It was my understanding that the proponents had two motivations. One was potentially look at the ISO elevators because of, a thought that that might be more cost effective or standardized globally or so forth. I thought that was kind of put to the side when this concern was raised, and then I think there was more of a consensus around if there is an ASME pathway so that we can achieve smaller lower cost and, gain square footage and so forth, that would be motivation to consider this. So am I incorrect that there could be an ASME pathway here for wheelchair size?
Yeah, Todd, I think that when we're looking at the ambulance requirement, we're talking about a fire service requirement. When we're looking at accessibility, you could have, I guess, it just depends, right? So again, accessibility requirements have increased in turning radius and the size, but I think that my recollection is that you can be, if you eliminated the stretcher requirement, you could still have an ASME compliant conveyance that is wheelchair accessible. Correct.
Correct. I think that's the legislative question, is they're wondering, can we eliminate the stretcher requirement in this typology? I would limit the discussion to that, if there's an ASME pathway.
I'm going to defer to the fire folks.
Yeah, I'm curious. A question I have is the ASME solution you're talking about is those elevators would only fit wheelchairs. So if somebody needs to be brought out in a stretcher from the 6th floor, how are they brought out?
And again, if I may jump in, I'm not making this argument. That my understanding of the argument is because the elevators are optional in these buildings anyway, should the requirement for the stretcher be there, or is wheelchair accessible enough if it's optional?
And I wasn't clear, is it optional? Do we not have to have elevators? No? Okay.
Nope. You can have a 6-story walk-up.
Okay.
If it's optional, then just don't require it. That'd be such a perk for an older aging person to be able to go up and down the elevator in a wheelchair.
Let me be clear. It's optional to provide an elevator. Once you provide the elevator, then it needs to meet these requirements. And so you'll see in this language, in buildings provided with an elevator that are in our occupancy, it is required to be stretcher size. Same thing for the accessible means of egress. Once you provide the elevator, then those those upper floors are considered accessible floors, and they are required to be served by an accessible means of egress if they are at the 5th or 6th story. So they don't have to have an elevator, but once you provide it, there's some additional provisions that apply.
At what
Right.
point do you have to have an elevator? 8 floors, 10 floors, above 6? I'm surprised at 5 or 6 stories that it's optional. But Dave, go ahead.
I'm going to defer to John Goldsmith first, and I'll respond after him.
Jonathan?
So when we start talking about the accessible elevators, an wheelchair accessible elevator is still a 5 foot by 5 foot elevator. The only thing that changes on those dimensions when you go to a stretcher elevator is you move the door access from the center of the elevator car, you offset it to one side, and then you can still fit a stretcher in it. So the only thing we're talking about saving money is moving where the door is at on the car for our basis for a wheelchair versus stretcher elevator.
Okay. Dave?
Now, what I was going to add too is that the concerns about what do you do with a patient has to come out in the stretcher is biggest part of the fire department's concern about this. Our concern with this is if we're doing procedures to a patient and we're having to carry them down the stairs while we're doing that, that is going to be a problem. We already have that in the existing facilities. So if an elevator is provided, we should not have to do those services to those patients while we're climbing down the stairways. We should be able to have a safe place to be able to have them brought down very carefully so they're not going to be further injured by what's going on. It's a life safety issue with this, and it is. We're well aware that the elevators are not required everywhere, but if they are properly, or if they are required, or they are put in optionally, then they should be able to serve the proper use for that. One of the other things that's been a big contention as well is that, and you have to kind of look at this yourself, is so if I'm living in a 6-story building, wouldn't I like to have an elevator? That's a lot of stairs. And we've had that discussion already about, well, if we're going to keep the trash or have them take the trash out, well, if you're going to carry it down the steps, or can you go down the elevator? It is a matter of convenience. And I think that if somebody wants to sell their building, they're going to be putting elevators in anyways. So as John indicated, there's a way of doing this that can meet the requirements of ASME and still get the ADA requirements. Unfortunately, ISO doesn't necessarily have that path for that. So just for consideration.
Hey, Patrick?
Yeah, I'll just say, as someone who's lived in a 6-story building but had to go up and down 8 flights of stairs without an elevator, it's not necessarily ideal, but when that's your affordable option that lets you live close to work or go to school or something, having that as an option in the market is nice. Is it ideally would I want to do that when I'm older? Probably not. But I think it's good in certain use cases having it an option in the market. So thank you. And I'll also add, I went through a kidney stone with that. So going up and down all those stairs with that, it wasn't easy, but I was glad to have the option.
Okay, so the way the proposal is written right now is we're just doing it per code. So if you provide an elevator, it has to be a stretcher. Is that right? Todd, I'm hesitant to say this group with all of the other things that we're tackling, to be the leader to make the change and say it doesn't need to be a stretcher elevator. I think it's pardon the pun, but it's a stretch.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the discussion here, and I'll take it on to put this into a report for when the discussion comes up later in session. So really appreciate everyone's expertise.
And Dustin, is that on our list?
Yeah, we added it today.
Oh, okay. So I think per code, and then I would say we take it off. And if the legislature decides to make a change, it would also apply to this appendix, I think so. So we have 20 minutes left. What I would like us to do is to start grouping these. And Dustin, you're the only one with the whole with everything on top there, or with the updated version available. I see the fire department ones that we have already kind of suggested that we schedule those for the next meeting, which is
October 7th of this topic.
Yeah. So it is column B, is it not, the date scheduled?
Technically, I think it might be column C, but essentially, yeah.
Okay. The next column to the left of the highlighted, I'm going to suggest we put 10-7 in on those four. That we have there. John, go ahead.
If you're looking at grouping, that third one from the bottom on the NFPA 13 minimum standards, based on today's discussion, I think we have that on well, in the PDF, it's the top line of the second page. There's a sprinkler requirements item there, which is basically, I think, the same issue. If that up, keep going up.
Here it is.
Oh, there, yep, right there. The same issue.
Before you did that, was that an alarm? Did you replace it? Is one the sprinkler and one the alarm?
Well, one, I inserted it right in between the lines, so the
Okay,
existing stuff
okay.
didn't go away.
Okay. All right, so as far as grouping, where are you at?
So I've did the fire department stuff, and maybe sprinklers might be a good topic to
Yes.
segue in with October 7th.
Yes.
Can I ask, Mike Messer, did you also have, or I should say Associated Fire Marshals, have you also been looking at the language on fire alarm? Is that something that you're asking to bring back as well?
Yeah, and it was during the meeting. I actually sent you a working draft of what we're looking at for fire alarm. Still have a little bit of discussion within our group, and then we'll actually have some questions for the group as a larger on which way they may or may not want to go. So that kind of working copy is in your inbox, Ardell.
Okay, so is that under comments on item 17, Dustin? I don't know if that's something that.
And what are row 18, 19, 20, and 21?
I think these are all subsections of the fire alarm requirements. So
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that they've been working on language on that, and so if that makes sense to group together in the same meeting.
Yes. Does to me October 7th for all of those. And the next meeting after that is November something. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm going to suggest the ones on the top that we were just talking about, the number of units per floor or total number of units should be focused in November. Do you have the date, Dustin?
Well, okay, so our next one for us, so if we're gonna come in on October 7th to discuss what we have on there so far, the next single exits topic meeting will be on November 18th.
Okay. Let's put November 18th on that one. I'm still on the ones up at the top that we were discussing today. I think the construction type is probably similar, although does that get into the fire at all? Oh, Todd, go ahead.
I have a comment after you finish.
Okay. The construction type there on row, is it 12?
I'm moving it all. I'm gonna move the stuff we've already kind of categorized into a date up above.
Okay. Then I can't talk about
specific rows just yet. All right. Okay, what was the title of the section, Roger?
Well, it was the construction type. Now it's row
Okay.
23.
Gotcha.
Is that related to the fire? Should we try to address that on October meeting, I guess is my question. And Mike, does it dial into part of your conversation at all or not?
I don't know if construction type would be a big factor
Okay.
or the other areas of fire. It plays more into building code with what Ardell and John and some of
Okay.
the other folks are working on with fire resistant construction.
Okay. John, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think you could lump that in on the 18th of November. It's not directly related, but it's kind of there.
And then I also think the sleeping units gets into the number of units and size of unit question, right? So that should be on
Yeah.
the 18th as well.
Yeah, that was going to be my other comment. Yes.
Okay. So page down, what else have we got there? Stairway width.
I know that Marcus Johnson had some comments on stairway width, and he's not available to be here today.
Yeah.
Uh,
I actually think we should put that on the next one on the October. I mean, it's firefighter response times. That was part of the issue. So I think that's an October one. And then EERO exit.
Escape and rescue openings, access to the yard.
That was driven, I think, by fire department, right? And I remember that conversation got into the ladder and ladder access and everything. So I think that should be on October 7th. What it's kind of becoming is the October 7th is going to be driven by fire a lot, and then the November one is going to be more building code. What else?
So this stuff here, the next four were more about amenity spaces and how they communicate with the protected areas.
All of those, including the row 53, 54, 55, and 56, and 57, all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all 9 of those highlighted are similar, right? Some are connected.
Yeah.
I would suggest we put that on the November meeting, although that might be a topic we can dig into if we get through the fire issues on the October meeting. Yeah, put them at the front of the November. Yeah, perfect. What do we
Okay.
have left?
I think that's all of them. Or there's the user note that needs some editing, but I think that would be
Well,
like the last task kind of
yes,
thing.
and I mean, that's 2 meetings and what I'm, that's kind of to decide upon what direction we think we need to go. Then my assumption is in a December meeting, whatever that date is, we would have the proposal itself updated. I mean, eventually, once we get all of these decisions made, somebody probably needs to go through this WABO proposal and integrate the decisions we make into it, and then we can walk through. That December meeting would be the final walkthrough of the proposal.
The December 16th.
I would put December 16th on that user note, and also we need to just integrate everything else into the version. So, okay, Todd, I think that's our schedule. Do you?
I was just gonna, thank you, just gonna add, if in case you haven't already, about the October 24th the local government committee. Just make sure
I think
everybody is aware.
I thought that was the 15th.
Oh, but that's probably right. So did you already mention that?
We've spoken about it a couple times today, but not like specifically the date that it's on and what's going on. But the legislatures asked the SBCC to update on some of our legislative tasks at the House Local Government Committee meeting on the 15th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's also a chance for us to ask questions and clarifying legislative intent if there are questions.
All right. Anything else for anybody?
Yeah, Roger, I'm new to the group here, so bring me up to speed on that October 15th. Are we supposed to attend that meeting?
Yes. So we have meetings. The full tag has meetings every 2 weeks.
Roger,
But-
he's asking about the legislative
Yeah, the legislative one.
House committee.
Oh,
So
the
no,
October
not
15th.
required to attend. You're welcome to join in, but SBCC council members will be on deck to answer questions that that committee might have for us.
Can be, don't have to. I mean, yeah, I want to do what I can to
Correct.
help
Yeah, I
out,
mean, yeah, I don't think there's any need for unless you want to see what's
Nope.
talked about there.
but all good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I guess I can officially go to the next agenda item, which is new business. Anybody have any new business? If not, I will give everybody 9 minutes back to their day. Great progress, everybody. I think we're moving in a great direction. And we will keep plowing forward. I'll see most of you in 2 weeks for the multiplex housing meeting.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Dustin. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
You bet.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.
All right, thank you.